Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! We did it!
Here's your host, Paul Sir.
Good morning and welcome. It's Hoop City. And you know what, Josh? It's Hoop City in the middle of a snowstorm at the end of April, and it couldn't be better. We're talking about hoops. We're talking about NBA playoffs, and there is so much ground that we have to cover today.
Nothing says beautiful day like an Edmonton street being covered in snow. But basketball starting at 11 a.m., so it all evens out.
It all evens out. In the end, it is what it is. And we were chatting with Brandon Douglas beforehand. We choose to live here. So Mother Nature is always going to have her way. And in Edmonton, you never know what that way will be. So good morning, everybody. So glad to have you with us. Our text line, 833-401-1440. 833-401-1440. Would love to have your questions, insights into what has been a very surprisingly entertaining first round. And excited to get into it. And we're going to start today with Josh's 3 questions. So, Josh, let's go right into number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so number 1 is very related to you and your Minnesota Timberwolves.
Can't wait.
All the series are 3 games deep now, and the series to most watch on both sides of the bracket, respectively, are the Wolves v. Nuggets and the Hawks v. Knicks. How do you feel about that?
Well, absolutely. Like the Nuggets and the Timberwolves, I think, has taken a couple of surprising turns. I have some very strong opinions about this, and in my conversation with Ben Golliver that's coming up a bit later in the show that we pre-taped on Thursday, we talked about this, and what disturbed me about Denver was, number 1, they don't have Peyton Watson. That's a big gap in a team that doesn't have a lot of depth with their bigs. So that's number 1. Number 2, Joker did something that I just strongly object to in any great player. And here I am talking about the best player in the world in a negative way. But he tinkered with having to assert himself on offense by artificially trying to create shot opportunities for his teammates in the first half of both games 1 and 2, and then turning it on in the second half. Now, it worked in game 1. He had 25, and I think he had a triple-double. Mm-hmm. But in game 2, Rudy Gobert was, and I made this point, I think he was the MVP in game 2, and he only had 2 points because of the way that he finally flustered and thwarted Joker, who has owned him, Josh, throughout his career. He has scored more than anybody ever has on Rudy Gobert statistically. So, and then in game 3, it was the exact opposite. The Joker came out and was forcing shots. He took, I think, their first five of their first 6 shots, was 0 for 6, terrible shots, and he never really got going. He still ended up scoring in the 20s, leading a very, very impotent Nuggets offense. And this is from a team that led the league in offensive efficiency through the season. So it was a combination of things. Plus the Timberwolves, Jaden McDaniels, most people have heard, trash talking about the defense that the Denver Nuggets play, naming names, Joker, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, terrible defenders from the lips of Jaden McDaniels. He took the challenge. It really reminded me of Muhammad Ali in a pre-fight scrum insulting his opponent. That's what McDaniels did. But you know what, Josh? He delivered.
Yeah, he delivered. That game on Thursday was really something. I think Jokic still had 27 points and 15 boards or whatever it was.
7 for 26. 27 on 26 shots are un-Joker-like
That is
numbers.
The worst 27 and 15 game in NBA history because I genuinely think...
AI used to have... Allen Iverson had a lot of those.
But I genuinely think that he gave up probably 40 points on the opposite end of the... The Wolves on Thursday scored 68 points in the paint. I think Jokic was attacked for like 50 of them.
He was.
It was an absolute blitz. I've never seen a more simple motion offense run on an incredible Denver Nuggets team because Like Io DeSomo would cut in, and Joker would go, oh, "Okay, I got to stop him." And then Jaden McDaniels was like, "Great, I'm just gonna cut baseline." And bing bang boom, there's 70 points in the paint. Like unbelievable. And you're sitting there watching the game, and like you're married. I'm sure your wife has said this to you at one point or another. Is like she can see you thinking. Like you look at someone and they're thinking really, really hard and they're trying to figure something out.
Yeah.
That's what Jokic looked like on the floor on offense. Was you were looking at him, you're like, normally he's so quick to go, I know where the ball is supposed to go. On Thursday, he was like out thinking himself out of the game. You could see that he was thinking too hard. He was thinking really, really hard about what to do.
You make a great point, Josh, but I go back to what I was saying about the Joker taking game 1 and game 2 like he had an off-on switch. Mm-hmm. What you can't do is switch your offense off and on. You have to find your equilibrium, which means you have to play at a certain level of intensity at all times, because in the NBA, but it's at any level, you just can't do that unless you're just so physically superior or your skill set is so superior to your opponents. You can't turn the switch. Joker tried to turn the switch. The Nuggets tried to turn the switch. Jamal Murray was marvelous in game 1. He was good in game 2. He had 30 points, but he was non-existent in the second half when Jaden McDaniels locked him down. But the thing about Jamal Murray is he was never designed to be the Nuggets' number 1 offensive threat. And Joker was trying to make him an offensive threat and trying to get his teammates involved. And you know what? His teammates aren't that good. Mm-hmm. Like Christian Braun, he's been god awful. He can't hit a shot. He is so ineffective. I mean, the obvious comparison would be look at the production of Dante DiVincenzo for the Wolves, who's shooting with confidence. He's all over the floor on defense. Braun's on his heels. That's what he needs to be for the Nuggets. He needs to be that guy that's all over the floor on defense, being a disruptor. They have to find disruptors, and they're going to be hard-pressed to do that because the Wolves bench, Josh, has been outstanding. DeSunmo's game the other night was fantastic, and he really has been the acquisition in the trade deadline this year in the NBA, and boy, has he made the Wolves a much better team.
Yeah, no, that was a great deadline acquisition. I think I was on here talking about it after. It's like he's very much in that Benedict Mathurin, like these guys can just like, they will turn it on for a game or whatever where, they'll average 12 points and then all of a sudden they're going to have 28. And to the credit of Io is that he's also a two-way guy. Like he is a very strong guard defender and can get his hand on the ball. And then on the flip side of this one, the Hawks Knicks, I asked you on, was that I don't know, whenever you were on the Carius show, did New York find their new villain in CJ McCollum? Because now Trae Young's not a part of the Atlanta Hawks organization anymore. My God, has he ever showed up? Like he just actively going after Jalen Brunson. Like it puts a lot of things into perspective for the New York Knicks. And can a small guard be the best player on a championship team? Because when you think about it, in reality, Steph Curry is an absolute outlier. And if the New York Knicks lose this series, everyone should apologize to Becky Hammon for, first of all, saying that Jalen Brunson can't be a one on a championship winning team. And the apologies better be as loud as the disrespect. I do not like that everyone was being so mean to Becky Hammon, my girl.
Well, Becky Hammon's fantastic, and she's absolutely right. And I think it's being borne out right now is Brunson's a fantastic player. But if you're going to run everything through Brunson at 5'11" with real defensive limitations in this league, you're in trouble. And when you're back and your second best player, who's virtually an all-NBA player in Karl Anthony Towns, but still highly suspect and easily exploited on defense, you've got problems. And the Knicks have problems. Now, they're the first team in NBA history to lose 2 playoff games consecutively by 1 point. It's not like they're not in the series, but they're not able to close. Game 2, this is to your point, Josh. Game 2, when the Knicks had the ball with approximately 10 seconds to go, They got the ball into Brunson's hand, who made an absolutely god-awful play.
It was bad.
Way too late in the shot clock. And that's one of the many complaints I have about NBA going on just what I would call blind. This is the way we're going to do it no matter what. Why do you have to run the last play through one guy when there are probably other opportunities because the other team knows you're going to run the play through one guy? And now you've got Brunson penetrating to the baseline and throwing a very, very sloppy interior pass in traffic that's knocked away. Knicks lose. They found a way to lose that game, as they did the other night. Brunson can't be the guy that you completely depend on. And I think there's lots and lots of rumblings within the Knicks organization, both from the players' standpoint and at the upper echelons. You've got Brunson's dad on the bench with Mike Brown. You've got all kinds of stuff percolating. So if by some miracle Atlanta, well, I wouldn't even call it a miracle anymore, but if Atlanta wins this series, the Knicks offseason is going to be tumultuous.
It's going to be a really interesting offseason because if I know anything about the New York Knicks franchise, they'll probably fire Mike Brown and be like, we'll run it back with everybody else.
Absolutely. They'll absolutely do that. And the problem is now the way that trades are being handled in the NBA, it's not like you've got a disgruntled Mikal Bridges who's playing awful basketball, and he's got an extension coming in. I think it's 4 years for $36 million a year. Who's going to pick that up with a guy who's a head case and is showing himself as a head case? So it's going to be really interesting. Let's go to question 2. Yeah.
Question 2. The Lakers are up 3-0 on the Houston Rockets, and it looks like LeBron James has turned back the clock a little bit here. But I think the biggest reason for the Rockets being down in this series and as a whole having a lackluster season is due to the absence of Fred VanVleet.
That's one of the reasons. I agree with you. But I don't look at VanVleet as the fix-all. They would be much, much better with Freddie. The fact that they did not address not having a true point guard during the trade season is abysmal, and shame on the front office for not doing what was necessary. I mean, look at Dennis Schroeder, who's buried on the bench with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and why wouldn't they try to pick up a guy like him who's a more than serviceable point guard to come in and give you what you would call true point guard minutes? So that's number one. They didn't deal with the here and now. And yes, Freddie would make them better, but they also have problems with an aging Kevin Durant who's out with injuries, and then the fact that with the exception of an undersized Reed Shepherd, they don't have any sustainable three-point shooting threats. Plus, I think their coach has lost the locker room just based on body language, what's going on out there. Again, the other night, they found a way to lose. They battled back. Certainly, they have quality players, but if Amen Thompson can't really work on improving his jump shot in the offseason, what we're seeing right now from Thompson is probably what we're going to see throughout his career, because until he becomes a better shooter, he's going to have limitations. And he's really good. I mean, he had high 20s the other night. Şengün's a very good player. He's slow. He's kind of Jokic in that respect, so he's not a shot changer, rim protector type player, but he's a very good player. Rockets have some good pieces, but they don't seem to have a management that responded to the here and now appropriately, and they have a coach that a lot of questions are going to be asked because most certainly they're going to lose this series.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to lose the series. It's a foregone conclusion essentially at this point. I do just come back to VanVleet. He was the best pick and roll operator in the NBA last year. He's got a decent shot. He's got championship pedigree. He is easy and breezy. He stays calm. And the fact that he basically can't run drills or anything like that is bad for the progression of Reed Shepherd. It's bad for the entire offense because what we've seen it boil down to this year is Rockets up 8, Rockets lose. And when they get it in tough, it is here, Kevin Durant, please bail us out. Here's the ball. That is their whole offense. It's a total, absolute mess. And they don't have that floor general. And I see where you come from with Dennis Schroeder, but even there's a reason he's buried on the bench, and he's been on 11 different NBA franchises or something like that.
I totally disagree with that. I think Schroeder, unless he's a head case, when you watch Schroeder, and they're two very different games. Like, he's all world when you play like in the World Cup in FIBA basketball. I think it's more that the NBA doesn't use him appropriately. And here's where I'll stick to my guns on this, Josh, because he'd be a heck of a lot better than what the Rockets don't have right now, because they have nothing right now, and they need at least something. They need somebody that can get the ball over half court, get it into the offensive flow of things, which I blame the coaches for the lack of offensive flow. That I think they have coached the pieces that they have very, very poorly because they're not functioning well together. That's fixable. They can be better than that. It won't be perfect because the pieces are sort of oddly fit together. But look at the Timberwolves. They also have odd pieces, but that are functioning together, very, very comfortably, even though during the season they're up and down. Now they're finding their mojo. And I think with the Rockets, they just haven't done that. So, you make a good point, and I know Freddie would make a huge difference with this team. But once again, without Kevin Durant, who bails them out in the last second, and Fred VanVleet down the stretch at a 5'10" point guard isn't going to be the guy like Brunson that you're going to be able to rely on to create a shot when you need somebody to make a play when the shot clock's running down.
Yeah. All right, over to number 3. This is my obligatory Raptors mention. They
deserve the obligatory mention.
They managed to take Game 3 at home against the Cavaliers in resounding fashion, might I add. As Brandon Ingram only managed to put up 12 points on the board. If you're the Raptors, you have to find a way to get off the notorious BI3 in the offseason by any means necessary.
I don't know about by any means necessary because they've got a huge investment in him, but maybe, you know what, you may be right, because I think what we're seeing with Ingram right now is he's not a playoff player. He's not physically and mentally designed to be a playoff player. He certainly doesn't seem to be mentally tough. Like, he's out there, he's trying hard. He looks like he's trying to be a good teammate. That's positive, but when you're paying somebody that kind of money, which goes back to a couple of Raptor contracts, Ingram being one and Pirtle being another, where they're overpaid by any metric in the NBA, that you may very well be right that this team can't move forward until they are able to fill that spot more effectively. The problem is, how are you going to trade Ingram in that contract and get the kind of value that you need to get back that will make you a better team? That's my question. I'm looking more at, I think they have to move off quickly. He just doesn't stay healthy long enough. And you know what? When he's in there, he can be very, very good, but he's very unpredictable. I guess that's where I'm going with it. But Ingram has been horrible so far. The other night, the Raptors had a great team effort. CMB was fantastic. Murray Boyles completely surprised me because prior to that, I was on Kevin's show, and I was saying you just can't win with Murray Boyles coming in and playing the post. I was wrong. And then, of course, RJ had a magnificent night, as did Scotty Barnes. I mean, we're seeing playoff Scotty Barnes impressing night after night. And I think that it also is starting to show that people are too quick to jump off RJ's bandwagon. Work with him. He's not a great defender. So what? He's a very effective offensive player. His three-point shot is actually improving. So stick with RJ. Of course, stick with Scotty. Shore up the point guard. See if you can find value for Ingram in the offseason. Pirtle, we'll see. You know what? If they could get value for Ingram, I'd keep Pirtle over Ingram, simply because I still question whether Ingram's a great locker room guy. So, but your point's well taken. But you know what? They figured out, at least that night, on how to slow down, bother, and make both Harden and Mitchell uncomfortable for the Cavs. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference. We talked about that last week. We've talked about if the Raptors are going to compete, that's what they're going to have to do. And they did in Game 3, and they ended up blowing the Cavs out.
Yeah, they did blow the Cavs out, and it was awesome to watch. And the Scotiabank was absolutely rocking. I actually had a buddy that was there watching the game.
I bet they had a ball.
And Vladdy sitting courtside, getting the crowd amped up. But I remember having an argument with my same buddy about who would you rather keep, RJ or Brandon Ingram, and I was like, I'd rather keep RJ. He's like, well, why? I was like, well, they were better when he was around, and then guess what? He got injured, and their pace dropped, their points per game dropped, like everything about the team dropped, and Brandon Ingram did not elevate his game. Like he's just there. He scores his 21 points a night, anywhere from like 25 to 18, and then sometimes he shoots. He gets 38 points in a night. But I'm just like, this is not a guy that we can like lean on. And the Raptors are a team very much by committee, and he just doesn't fit like the committee offense that they have. It's like,
but I'm gonna add a little. I agree with what you're saying, but I'm gonna add a little bit to it. I'm gonna layer it a little bit more. Ingram isn't built for the playoffs because he needs so much time to create his shot. And in the playoffs, you have to do everything faster and quicker with greater purpose. And Ingram still wants to play at that slow pace. And so you have a defender like Wade or Mobley who won't let him play at that pace anymore. RJ can make quick decisions. RJ's a much better cutter and gets a lot of points throughout the course of a game on back cuts, on off-ball cuts. And so he can create shots not by putting the ball on the court, but by watching his defender's eyes and where he's looking and making the cut. Scotty Barnes is turning into a great creator/passer. So I felt this way all year, but I would keep RJ any day of the week over Ingram. And I think we're seeing proof of why that is, that unless Ingram finds something that he has not found as of yet, and hopefully he will in Game 4. But we need more from Ingram, but right now you're getting a lot more out of RJ. I'm going to just run through a real quick couple of things. I'm going to just do a buying and selling segment. I'm buying on LeBron and the Lakers. Not that they'll win in the second round, but what they've done in the first round with Luka and Austin Reeves on the bench has been overwhelmingly impressive. I have often been not, lukewarm on LeBron James. What he's done in this playoff series has been unbelievable at his age. Like, he's not the same player he was physically, but he is not his age at all. He is Brady-esque and maybe even a step above Brady in terms of his athleticism, his strength, his ability to compete. LeBron James has been fantastic, and then getting the contributions from other players like Kennard, very, very impressive. I'm buying on Portland. Even though they lost last night, they're going to lose the series to San Antonio, and I'm buying the Spurs as well. But San Antonio last night, Harper, you think he's going to be good? Stephon Castle, he's going to be an elite all-NBA player. But Portland, they've taken such big steps forward as an organization, and they get Damian Lillard back next year, which may create some problems as well as offering his great shooting. But they're a fine young team. And what I'm selling on is I'm selling on the Knicks. They don't have the right roster combination, in my opinion. They might turn it around, make me eat crow on this. But right now, they just I've never been a Mike Brown guy. I think he's soft, and I think that shows up here a bit. And I'm also, big time selling on the Rockets. Like they're that team that spent a lot of money to construct this roster. And they're going to have to make some serious adjustments in the offseason.
How much are you selling your Rocket stock for? I'll buy it.
Okay, I'll sell it for. We'll go into the penny stock index on that because I know you love Freddie, and that's and for good reason.
I think next year's going to be a big bounce back year for them. I think this is a bad year off here.
Okay, well, and they still won 50 games, so it's not like there was a train wreck. But it's not what they paid for. It's not what they expect, and I'm just not sure. This is the coach for this team. We will see. Then I have one final category, and that's my jaundiced eye. And my jaundiced eye right now is towards the WNBA. Do you know, Josh, that the Indiana Fever, with Caitlin Clark back and all of the talent that they've signed, still have not been able to sell out opening night?
Really?
Because the ticket prices have skyrocketed. And here's my jaundiced eye towards the WNBA. Did the players deserve to get paid more? Yup. But do they deserve the money they're getting paid based on the performance of the league? Nope. Because, nothing against women's sports at all. Always been walk the walk on supporting women's sports. 3x3, Canadian national team coming to Edmonton. Constructing that whole deal to get them here, working to raise the money to get them here. Edmonton grads, greatest team, one of the greatest teams in basketball history. But the WNBA felt their oats. They went too far, too fast. Now, hopefully this year they'll grow into their new deal. People will get used to paying the premium that they're demanding now in the WNBA to stay afloat. But that's my jaundiced eye for today. We're going to take a break right now. And when we come back, we're going to bring in Coach Luke Isu and Muneeb Khan. And we're going to be talking about them as our community champions here on Hoop City with Paul Sir, Josh Fenwick, on your sports leader, Sports 1440. Welcome back to Hoop City with Paul Sir, Josh Fenwick. We are joined by our community champions today. And Community Champions is sponsored by Innovative Benefits. If it's time for you to review your company benefits, personal insurance plans, or investment strategies, please talk to Randy Parrish and his team at Innovative Benefits. They will give you straightforward and honest advice with access to the best products in the industry. Trust the great folks at Innovative Benefits to do what's best for you, your family, and your business. To find out more, go to innovativebenefits.ca. I'd like to welcome in two guys that are, as our community champions, were actually a very easy choice for me. Because these are two gentlemen, I will call them young men because I can call almost everybody young men, that are walking the walk. They walk the walk in their efforts. They have their great sports talk show on Sunday mornings here on Sports 1440, but they coach in the community, and they're active in all aspects of trying to create opportunities for young people in our community. And I'd like to welcome in Muneeb Khan and Coach Luke Isu. Okay, guys, I'll start with you, Muneeb. Talk about your background. You know, like, I'm sure you played high school basketball. You love the game, but you love sports in general. Like, you're really into sports. What fuels your passion?
A few things. I think that sports are the greatest unifier in the world. There's something about the locker room that cannot be replicated in any other walks of life. But I think sports teaches you a lesson that you carry with you forever, right? The sacrifice, what it means to be a teammate, what it means to communicate with other people. And I just love every aspect of that. And there's a level of competitiveness, and when you need to have a competitive spirit that I think is important when you get into sports, and then that carries over when you get into life. And the bond that is kind of created, you know, we always talk about the locker room is a sanctity. There's a bond there and to be honest with you, when I stopped, when you stop playing sports, that's the thing that you miss the most. It's not just the game. It's
camaraderie.
It's the camaraderie of it all.
Yep.
It's going to playing high school basketball in Edmonton and traveling to other places with your team and your coaches and things like that, and having that type of fun. It's not really replicated in any other walks of life. And I love that aspect. That's why I enjoy coaching as well, because you get to see the new generation of young men and women and how they kind of interact with each other, what it means to them, what sports means to them, but what the camaraderie is going to be like. And I just feel like, you know, when you go into a sports arena or anything like that, you're not looking at the guy next to you on his political beliefs, his religious beliefs, or his race or anything like that. You're watching and you're supporting your team because there's a unified support for the Edmonton Oilers, right? There's a unified support for our hate of the Calgary Flames, right? So it's like there's a unifying thing about sports that I just enjoy so much, and there's no greater thing, I think, in the world. And I've made this kind of argument that I think that sports should be something that every child should have to do.
Mm-hmm. Even if they're... We'll come back to that.
Okay.
I'm going to jump over to you, Coach, on this. I love the points that Muneeb just made about fostering that kind of camaraderie, fostering those kind of life lessons that directly apply. How do you, as a coach, work at creating the atmosphere that will allow that kind of camaraderie, that kind of culture to develop?
Yeah, I think one thing we try to focus on is just honesty. Like, we try to build honesty within the program where it's just like, coaches aren't infallible. And that's one thing we've been trying to learn, especially me, because I am a younger coach, and kind of coming in, death of the ego, not having an ego, making sure everyone's voice is kind of heard, and making sure that it's a team. So, we have to be together. And that means I'm not always right, but I'm going to suggest my way most of the time, but I want you guys to have your opinions as well.
That's interesting you say that, death of the ego, because I get where you're going, but how do you develop the healthy ego of competitiveness, of self-belief, of assertiveness at the appropriate times, while surrendering at the same time, Coach, your ego to the betterment of the team, accepting your role, for instance? May not be what you want, and you may have experienced this, it may not be what your dad or mom wants either.
Yeah.
And so, but to get the kids to buy into that, honesty, that's a great starting point. As a young coach, what do you think you need to do to build them up so they get out there and compete as hard as they can, become as good as they can possibly be, while still being a great teammate?
Yeah, I think, like you said, buying into their roles is important, because everyone wants to be the guy that scores 20 points.
Of course we do.
Who doesn't?
Of course.
But it's just getting them to understand, like, hey, if you do this really well, like, this is what's going to take us over the top. And that's also, like, not giving recognition to the guy that always scores 20 points, because he gets his recognition in the score sheet. Telling him, hey, that guy that gave you that assist, he's the guy that really matters. The MVP of the game isn't always going to be the guy that gets the 20 points. Sometimes it's going to be the guy that gets the 3 steals because he played out of his mind. And us as coaches, we try to recognize that. We're like, hey, this guy had 3 steals. He's the MVP of the game.
And I think that's a critical point, is that you have to identify and celebrate those special contributions that do make quite a difference. Josh and I were talking in the first segment. Rudy Gobert was my MVP for Game 2, and he had 2 points because of the job he did on the Joker. But that's, of course, at the NBA level, and there's lots of zeros at the end of their checks. But and now you're dealing with kids you're dealing with kids and families that are sacrificing to pay to play. If you're in the club world, you both coach high school as well, in amongst your other activities. So Muneeb, like from your end, you talk a lot about the life lessons and the connections, etc. And that sports is very unique, and it is. I couldn't agree with you more. When I was at Alberta basketball, our trademark phrase was a game for life, and it really is. It's a game of life. It's a game for life. But now, in the end, what are you hoping the takeaways will be for the players that play for you, in what they're going to remember after their experience in that particular season is over?
I didn't do it for me. I did it for the man next to me, right?
Okay. Do you think that's realistic for young people to start? I don't mean that it's not realistic. I'm not criticizing. I agree with you. But how do you satisfy their individual needs while also the need to be doing it for the man next to you?
Yeah, I think that is there's a buzzword in sports, culture, right? Right. And we always talk about, like, how do you actually create culture? Well, you set a standard, right? Like, this is the standard that we want to play for and we want to play with. And
what are your standards based on? Like, when you set a standard, what are you referring to? How you play, how you emote while you play? Like, what are your standards?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. It's how you play, but it's also how you act, right?
Okay.
Who you are as a person in the building and outside of the building.
Yeah.
Right? We want to, we always talk about the idea that we got into coaching because we wanted to make good humans out of these young men. Mm-hmm. We want to make community builders as well, right? Like, not everybody's going to the NBA, sorry. Right? That's the reality of sports. It's the only meritocracy left in the world, in my opinion. And if it's a true meritocracy, there's only a handful of people that are ever going to make it to the top. But what are you doing as coaches to instill some of the things that are going to make these people good humans outside of our building. And I think that those are so we always talk about accountability, right? Like, you have to be good with your teammates. Like, you don't have to like your teammates, you have to love them. And there's an element that we always preach that we want to create good community builders that are good outside of us and are helping communities be better in a lot of different ways. And it's hard to create culture, but I think when you set standards in place of this is how we want to act in a locker room, it does translate to how we want to act on the floor and how you want to play, right? Attitude, we always talk about, right? You can't change. There's two things as athletes you can control: your effort and your attitude. And, I truly believe in that. Like,
You're
talent
100% right.
is very different, right?
You're
Talent
100%
fades
right.
away, but those two things, if you can control those things, they will translate on the floor. And if you just stick with that process, we can facilitate everything else around you. So, again, because we're still young, I think we're still learning from other coaches as well, from you, right, on how we can create a culture that is sustainable, because I think that's very important, is that we got into coaching in kind of rural Alberta area, right? So we're not really in the city. How do you sustain it over a period of time? And I think that those are still learning things as coaches, but we're still trying to be better. We talk about accountability. It's not just for the players. It has to be for us. When you mess up, that was on me.
Yeah.
Right, and things like that.
I think I saw like Matt Painter say something once. He was talking to a player, and he's asking the player to shoot a contested three. And he's like, you should have took that three, you're open. And then he goes back later and checks the tape. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. You were just a prisoner of the circumstance. That was my bad. So it's just things like that where it's like, as a coach, you have to be willing to say, I messed up. That was my fault. I'm sorry, guys.
Totally agree. And I think, too, that fallibility comment that you made earlier is really important to remember. You're dudes trying to do the best you can to be leaders of young men in this situation to make them better. I have a final question for each of you. I'll go to you first, Coach. How do you define winning? Is it results or is it process?
I think it's loving the process. Results come and they go. You can't win every game. You're going to lose lots of games. You're going to win a lot of games. I think falling in love with the process will ultimately build a winning program at the end of the day. So, like, if you're coming in every day and you're loving the practice, you're loving the game, you're learning IQ, like, those small things will eventually build up to a winning program. If you're just chasing results in the short term, I just don't see how you can eventually build a winning program.
Great observations. And Muneeb, my final question for you is, how important is practice relative to the experience that players have? Because in a lot of programs, now in high school, that's a different thing. You have set practice times. You can get a number of practices to prepare for a game. But when you get into the club world, it becomes very game-centric. Well, in the U.S. too, but it's become much more so that way. How important is practice to you in terms of accomplishing those goals that you've laid out?
Yeah, this is something that we have to address as a community, as people that are in the basketball world. There's too many games. We're playing way too much. We have to allow for way more practice time. And I've talked to a lot of high school coaches. That is their issue as well, is that now they're having to slot in different times, morning practices, weekend practices, and things like that. And now you don't have the same amount of players available because, parents can't drop them off in the morning or something, right? There's other things
very
happening.
real world things that prevent kids from getting there.
And it's a real struggle because now you're asked to play in 5 games, but you've only had 10 days of practice. And it's like, how is the results aren't, now you're getting off to slow starts, and how you're supposed to keep your team engaged. It's a very difficult thing to do because, we talk about the process, but in the short, results also matter because it's tough to continue to have the same vision when you're not winning at the same rate, right? Like, it's hard to keep motivated when you're not having the same level of success. So I think practice is the most important thing. How do you actually build your team culture, right? We talk about all of that, locker room vibes, sacrifices.
You're 100% right, and I'll editorialize real briefly. You're 100% right in the culture, but I would say this, like if you compare the culture in North America to the culture in Europe, for instance, long-established culture, sports culture in Europe, lots of practice, few games.
Few games.
Here, because we're a capitalistic sports system, that now you've got motivations to not only pay to play, you're also got motivations to run tournaments to make money, and you've got the motivations to run clubs to make money, particularly if it's your livelihood. That makes it really difficult because I remember one final comment. I talked to one coach, and he had a very winning team. He was stacked with lots of talent. How many games do you play this last? He said, we were 29-1 this month. I said, that's great. How many practices did you have? None. So you didn't practice for a whole month. And because you had more talented, can you remember all of your games? And you go, well, no. I said, then why are you playing them?
Yeah.
Every game should be a memory,
Yes.
not another rotation. And just because you recruited better players doesn't mean you're a good coach, and it doesn't mean your players are becoming better people and better players. I'll leave the final comment to you.
The other thing to just kind of add and kind of round it out is that it's also the individual, right? Players want to play the games because that's where they're getting the highlight clips from and the mixtapes from and things like that they can use for recruiting, because you're not getting those in practices. So how do we, and again, I've said this, we need to change that culture, that it needs to happen at the ground roots level. I don't think that there has to be somebody that comes in from an organization or something like that has to make those sweeping changes. It's coaches like us at the ground roots level that bring that to an address.
You have to set your club up and say, to play for us, you're going to have this many practices versus this many games. And if that's not right for you, we're not the right club.
Yeah, like we've had, like this year we're planning out our schedule for the next upcoming year, and we told our AD, like we need a month and a half of just straight preseason before we do any tournaments, any games, because like you rush these kids in and they don't even care about what they're learning about in practice anymore.
Well, because that's how they've been developed to not care, to not even understand, because the adults haven't created that kind of culture.
Yes.
That this is what you got to do to get better. You think you're having fun playing games, but that's like eating donuts. The more sugar, the better. It tastes great, but afterwards you're just a little heavier. So, that doesn't mean you're better. It just means you had a good donut. But you got to eat your vegetables. Shawnee Harley, the great coach from University of Calgary and longtime women's national team coach, said, got to eat your vegetables. And that's really true. And you know what I love about you guys is that you eat your vegetables, that you, again, walk the walk. You put the time in and you genuinely care about the seeds you're trying to plant in these young people's lives that are going to set them up for success as they go forward in their life, both on the court and off the court.
And, I just want to, coaching is something that is selfless, right? It requires a lot of time, energy, and we want to create kindness, empathetic, helping your neighbor kind of vibe in not only your locker room, but in the community. And I love all the coaches, right? Like, yes, there's a level of ego. You want to beat everybody and things like that.
Of course.
But when you're in it, you understand that it requires a lot.
Yeah.
And
it does.
So just want to give some love to all the coaches out there. Thank you, for everything to create a
100%.
Community.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more, and 100%. And that's what you guys are doing too. Absolutely. You're in the thick of it. You know what it takes. A lot of times people on the sidelines have no idea. So congratulations to both of you, and thank you to both of you for not just what you do on the court, but what you do in the station here too, to try to bring better sports talk experience to our community. You guys really are community champions. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you
nice.
so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go Wolves.
Go. I can't disagree with that. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, you got to listen to this. I had such a fantastic conversation with the longtime play-by-play voice of the Minnesota Timberwolves, Alan Horton. He's phenomenal. But you're going to get the guts of what's going on in the Wolves-Nuggets series next. So you're listening to this on, of course, Hoop City with Paul Sir, Josh Fenwick, here on your sports leader, Sports 1440. Sports 1440. I am pleased to be joined by the longtime voice of the Minnesota Timberwolves, play-by-play, and that's Alan Horton. Alan, thanks so much for making time to speak with me today.
You bet, Paul. Good to catch up with you.
Well, likewise. And it's good to catch up with me from your vantage point, Alan, after a decisive Game 3 victory for the Timberwolves last night. The Target Center sounds like it was rocking and rolling, and why wouldn't it be? But we'll get into the drama surrounding the game because there's some, I would call it somewhat uncharacteristic trash talking that I think Coach Chris Finch said to Jaden McDaniels, well, now you've said it, now you got to walk the walk. Yeah. And he did that in spades last night. Talk about the game last night.
So I think you're right. The trash talking, I think it happens in every series, but I think Jaden McDaniels took it to a whole new level. I can't remember another time in any playoff series where, he said, we just want to attack their defense. They don't play defense well. And he named all the names. He went Jokic, he went Murray, he went Brown, he went Gordon. He went through their lineup and said they're not good defenders. And that was a little shocking because, like I said, you don't hear that very often. And I'm always a big believer, and I know Chris Finch is in the same mindset where you let sleeping dogs lie. Like, don't give them any extra motivation. Yes. Especially a team as good as Denver that won a title just a couple of years ago, and they've got the world's best player in Nikola Jokic. So maybe not try to anger him, but with the cat already out of the bag, what are you then going to do? Well, I think everybody kind of realized, well, we got to back up what Jaden said. Jaden certainly led the way in that category. His defense has been unbelievable in this series.
It really has.
In Game 3. And the whole team came out, and they did exactly what Jaden was talking about. They attacked the rim. The rim numbers are unbelievable in this series. The Wolves have no fear of attacking Jokic, Gordon, whoever's inside. Gordon was out last night. But, the Wolves are getting 48 rim points a game, not paint points. They're getting 58 of those. But at the rim, those are high percentage shots, and they're shooting 74% on those shots, and Jokic is just getting torched. He seems unwilling to try to go up and contest because that's generally how they play. When David Allen was asked about his defense heading into this series, the first words out of his mouth was that there's multiple ways to play defense. One of them is having a good offense, which I think speaks volume about the fact that you don't have a very good defense if the first thing out of your mouth is talking about the offense. That's right. And during the regular season, that can work. And that philosophy has worked for Denver in years past. They don't have to be great defensively because their offense is so efficient. But when that offense doesn't look so efficient anymore, now you really have a hard time stopping teams. And the Wolves just absolutely steamrolled them last night.
They really did. And the McDaniels chatter, like you said, very unusual. Something I've really never heard, too, where he went down a litany of names very specifically and said, basically, you're terrible defenders, so we're going to attack you. Right. And there was a moment in Game 2 in particular where it looked like a switch was flipped, where the Wolves seemed to be a bit on their heels early in the game. They were taking perimeter shots, but then they started attacking, started having success, and then, of course, there's the fabled 19-point comeback. Wolves come back, win Game 2, and then absolutely just roll over the Thunder in Game 3. I'm curious about your perspective on this. Like, one of the criticisms of Jokic was in Games 1 and 2, it was like he was feeling it almost. The appearance was, I can flip the switch when I want to score. Yeah. In the first half, he was very passive offensively, looking to set his teammates up. He's such a great passer, et cetera. But then I wrote a blog about Game 2, and my MVP in Game 2 was a guy who scored 2 points and had 7 rebounds, and that was Rudy Gobert. Because really, for one of the few times, Alan, Rudy Gobert in Game 2 certainly dominated Nikola Jokic, and in much of Game 4, if not dominated, he gave Nikola Jokic more trouble than I've really ever seen anybody give him in terms of altering his shot, making him uncomfortable. Yeah. Rudy's play has been outstanding against. Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. It's a great lesson for all the kids out there too. Hey, you don't have to fill up the box score to have an impact in the game. The box score doesn't tell you everything. It tells you a lot of things, and you can tell a little bit by Rudy's impact with the plus minus. But his defense has been sensational, and so far when he's been the primary defender, opponents are shooting 33% against Rudy Gobert. That is 20% lower than expected. I mean, that's out of this world. That would lead the league if it was during the regular season. It does lead all postseason players. So he's been fantastic on that end of the floor. I mean, Jokic shot 57% in the regular season. He's shooting 40% in the postseason, and he's settling for threes. He's just jacking them up early. That's another thing that stunned me about last night, was that I think Jokic got up at least 3 or 4 3-point attempts in the first 6 minutes of the game. That's not his game. It's a complementary piece to his game, but he doesn't start shooting threes, especially when those threes haven't been falling. It's almost as if, clearly he wasn't giving up, but when you're taking the least path of resistance, that's a good sign for the other team if he's just settling for those outside shots. But Rudy has been awesome, and I really think resting him the final 3 games of the regular season, nobody takes better care of their body, is more meticulous about the food that he puts in his body. And so I think after a long season, that really paid dividends. And there's not, for a guard maybe, or someone who's got a shooting touch from the outside, a delay like that, 3 games at the end of the season plus the week off before the first game, that can kind of throw players out of rhythm a little bit. But Rudy's game is more confined to the rim and the paint, so it didn't throw his game out of rhythm, and I think the Wolves have really benefited. He's been unbelievable. He and Jaden McDaniels have been 2 of the best defenders, not only on the Wolves, but on any team in this postseason so far.
When you use the term a suffocating defense, I've never seen anyone play a more suffocating style more successfully than McDaniels did last night on Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
I mean, Jamal had an all-star season, but especially in the third and fourth quarter, it was like up another level. And I think people forget how big and long Jaden McDaniels is, and so athletic and so gifted at guarding the perimeter. But he's all of 6'9", right?
Yeah, and that wingspan he's got a 7-foot wingspan, and when he picks you up 3-quarter court, you feel it. And there's a big reason why Jamal Murray has struggled, not only in the series, but specifically in fourth quarters. He's worn down. They have to rely on him for upwards of 40-plus minutes a night. And by the time you get to that fourth quarter, I don't care what kind of shape you are, a 40-minute game is 48 for a reason. It's a long haul. And if you're constantly getting pressure on you the first 3 quarters, it takes its toll. And you see that with both Jokic and Murray. Their numbers just fall off a cliff in the fourth quarters. It didn't matter so much last night because the margin was so large in the fourth quarter. I did think it was interesting that David Adelman really pulled the plug with 4 something left to go on the clock, and it's kind of a 17-point game. And remember, Christmas Day, these 2 matched up, and Denver rallied back from a 9-point deficit in overtime with just like 2.5 minutes to go. So if any team should have had a little confidence that maybe we can get something going, as bad as that night was, I was really stunned that he just, you work so hard to try to give yourself every opportunity to win the game. I don't know why there wasn't just 2 more minutes or a minute and a half to see if that group could catch fire, because that's exactly what they did on Christmas Day against the Timberwolves.
Absolutely. And I'm talking to Alan Horton, the voice of the Minnesota Timberwolves, here on Hoop City with Paul Sir. Of course, so much attention is being paid, and I think the fact that Anthony Edwards hasn't been the dominant impact performer that we would expect him to be if he were 100% healthy. And I don't, Alan, want in any way to demean what, the fact that he's playing through an injury. But what is Ant's status with his runner's knee? And what was very, I thought, impressive for Anthony Edwards was he was so into the game, supporting his teammates, even though he couldn't be out there doing what he would like to do and what's expected from the fans, from his team, that he would be able to do.
Yeah, Ant has clearly not been himself in this series, and it's a result of that knee injury that caused him to missing 11 of the final 14 regular season games. So there's a part of it where he's still dealing with some knee discomfort. It's the same injury that Steph Curry went through and missed a ton of time. And the problem with that apparently is that there are ups and downs. You feel good one moment, you don't feel good the next moment. It's not sort of this linear path of just improvement. And so you can see him oftentimes rubbing that knee. He'll tweak it a little bit. He'll have some contact and he'll hold it. So I think he's dealing with a little bit of that and a little bit of still getting his legs back underneath him. You notice his 3-point shot has been way off in this series. And, that's kind of the last piece when you come back from an injury getting your legs and your body into it. That's a long shot from 23 foot, 9 inches. And that 3 ball has not been there. But I will say that his leadership in game 2 was just unbelievable. It sounded like he was just into it on the bench. He was encouraging guys. He's talking to Rudy. He's doing all the little things. And once the Wolves fell behind by 19, I don't know if that was the trigger, but whatever it was, they started moving the basketball, which is always the key to their offense. You have to have that 0.5 mentality. Either drive it, pass it, or shoot it, but keep it moving. Don't end up in isolation like the Wolves did 29 times in game 1. Well, they cut that in half. In game 2, they only have 14 plays of isolation. So that's a huge improvement. And I would imagine the numbers from last night are also pretty good. Low numbers of isolation. That's a nice sort of side dish to have, but you don't want to make isolation your main course. And so even though the shots haven't been falling, Ant has been doing all the different things. A little loud here. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Fortunately, they're not coming for me.
It's okay.
But Ant's been incredible with his leadership, and you see it in his rebounding numbers. I mean, he had 19 rebounds in those first 2 games. He's picked up the challenge defensively. The numbers when he's on the floor as a team have been really good, especially on the defensive end. So he's still making an impact, even though we're not seeing him put up 38, 42 points a game.
Back when the trade was made to bring Dosunmu in, I think I was one of the many voices, but I was a very loud voice about this is the trade. I thought that was the best trade in up to the deadline myself, because of what he brought in terms of just a game-changing speed, but also attitude and leadership. Not vocal, but just in terms of his energy and effort coming off the bench. The Wolves have had some good reserves. I mean, of course, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker was a great, but I think what Dosunmu brings is even more impactful from my vantage point, watching what he brings. Now, of course, he's just come off a phenomenal game. But even in games where he doesn't put up 25 like he did last night in such an efficient manner, the way he impacts the pace of the game, the pace of play, defensively, energizes the whole team. Talk about what Dosunmu means now to the Timberwolves.
Yeah, Jim Peterson and I were talking about this on the radio broadcast last night. He's almost like a mini Anthony Edwards. He's not going to get you upwards of 30 plus or anything like that, but he's got a similar body type. He does a lot of similar things that Anthony Edwards does. And when Ant goes out with a foul difficulty, you just go to Ayo, who's basically the Wolves, only had Naz Reid on their bench before the trade deadline, essentially. And they make this trade and pick up another 6th Man of the Year candidate. I mean, he finished in the top 7, I think, in 6th Man of the Year. So he and Naz, you just basically doubled your bench output. And while you did give up a couple of young pieces, those pieces weren't contributing this year. So it almost feels like you just got this extra player, a 6th Man of the Year candidate, out of the blue. And you just basically doubled your bench potential with Naz Reid and Ayo. And guess what? You got Bones Highland playing really well in the second half of the season. Then you throw in a little bit of Kyle Anderson and a little bit of Mike Conley, guys that aren't going to give you a ton of minutes, not a ton of production, but just winners who know how to play the game, know how to do things defensively. Both Kyle and Mike are 2 of the smartest players you'll ever put on the floor. So you don't lose when those guys go out there. And all of a sudden, you got yourself a pretty potent team when before you kind of looked at the Wolves bench and you said, it's pretty much Naz Reid and that's it.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, the play of Randall, I don't think I've ever seen him play better. And the same with DiVincenzo. The confidence that exudes from both of them right now and what they're trying to do. And what I love about what Randall is doing is sometimes I think he fades away from his strengths, settles for outside shots. He's going right to his strength. And DiVincenzo, the way he pulls the trigger so confidently, so quickly, and his impact on the defensive end and the hustle plays, the little things that don't show up on stat sheets. Like the Wolves are very, very potent right now. Denver is wounded. Now, they've got Jokic. I think he took a lot of criticism after game 2. He came out yesterday and tried to chuck and chase and was doing everything out of character for himself, like you said, taking early threes. Yeah. But now the Wolves are hitting on all cylinders. It's going to be really tough, I think, for Denver. They can do it, but it's going to be a lot tougher for them with the Wolves playing with the kind of energy and confidence that they're playing with right now.
And I agree. And I realized Denver won 54 games in the regular season. They earned the 3 seed, and their bench came up really big during the season because they missed a lot of time. Jokic missed time for, one of the few times in his career. Gordon missed a lot of time. Christian Brown missed time. Cam Johnson missed time. And they earned that 3 seed. But there was always something about Denver that I just felt wasn't quite as cohesive.
I agree.
As it was a couple of years ago. And I don't know if it maybe been these 8 straight years in the postseason. Maybe that's taken a toll. I don't know. There's just something a little bit off about this team. So I thought they were vulnerable. Now, they didn't look vulnerable in game 1, but boy, the Wolves punched them in the mouth in game 2, stealing that game. And all of a sudden now they're on the ropes. And I've always thought the Timberwolves, I know for a fact that these guys feel like they are their own worst enemy. They feel like they can compete with anybody in the league. They picked up 2 wins against OKC this year. They've beaten San Antonio twice as well. When they're at their best, they feel like they can throw punches with the best teams in the league. They go into Boston and won this year for the first time in like 20 years. So it's they have the capabilities, and it's usually been just their inconsistency, which has more to do with them than their opponent. So when they're locked in, and this was the hope, was that you could flip this switch in the postseason and all of a sudden have everything matter. And okay, we're all dialed in. We're playing together for one another. We didn't know whether that was going to happen, because when you finish 9-10 down the stretch in your final 19, that doesn't look particularly good. There wasn't a huge win streak during the season. It was the consistent part of the Wolves season was their inconsistency and
really
losses they shouldn't had. And, you end up as the 6 again. You're hoping for a top 4 seed. Didn't happen. But they've been able to come together. And right now they look like a juggernaut, and they've got game 4 coming up tomorrow night.